Hey, good afternoon, my friends. Welcome back to the Rob Maida Show. We've got a good one for you this week. You know, the election cycle's heating up, and we got a really hot race in the Missouri Senate seat. But the big question is, why is a Republican risking that Senate seat in Missouri when we're trying to take the Senate back with a clear majority? You know, having run for the U.S. Senate, that is a really daunting question for Republicans in Missouri and really around the country because Senate seats are really national. Each GOP candidate needs to be asking themselves if their presence in the race is causing the seat to be put at risk of being taken by a Democrat. The intra-party primary fight is often about establishment versus outsider candidates, and the usual barbs thrown at the outsiders are, you have to get out, you can't win, you're causing X, Y, or Z effect. In this case, putting the seat at risk. Believe me, I've been told to get out of a race publicly by the biggest of names in GOP politics, so I understand where a particular candidate who is being called out is at intellectually. But I've never been called out for family or character issues that were documented facts, and that's why I wanted to get our guest to come on the show this week. He wrote a recent article for townhall.com, and it starts out like this, quote, politicians are fungible. In almost every instance, one candidate is essentially replaceable by another. And this is why we must be utterly unsentimental about them. They owe us loyalty, and they have a fiduciary duty to us to win or to get out of the way in favor of someone who can. And this is why Eric Greitens, a.k.a. Kinky Todd Akin, needs to drop out of the race for the Missouri Senate seat. Greitens is the ex-Democrat who changed into a Republican to become Missouri governor, a position he quit in disgrace, one step ahead of impeachment by a GOP supermajority. Close quote. So let's get this discussion started. Noted author, retired Army colonel, and all-around, quote, caring person, Kurt Slichter. Sir and my friend, welcome back to the Rob Maida Show, man.
Rob, great to be back. I think this is a good topic because I think some of our people are not looking at things the way steely-eyed killers like you and I. Well, I'm more like steely-eyed car washer, do. And I think I think the little clip you read is really sets it out.
Mm-hmm.
Politicians are not there for themselves. We don't owe them anything.
Yeah.
And when they stop being useful, they need to move on. Nothing personal. I like Donald Trump. If Donald Trump's not the best candidate in 2024, he needs to step aside. It has nothing to do with me liking Trump or not. I wrote a book defending him. It has to do with winning. It's all about the mission. And I know, as another colonel, you understand mission has come to go first, and I think that's what really disturbs me about the Eric Greitens. Mm-hmm. He's got a lot of baggage on it. That's indisputable. It's there.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's all true or partially true or completely true isn't really the issue. The issue is it's there. It's having an effect. Mm-hmm. It is driving away potential voters. That makes him essentially the only candidate who really can lose to a Democrat in Missouri.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on is that you don't really nail it in the article, but I know you've tweeted about it before, and that is the polling. I think he's the only candidate that loses to the Democrat or is even with the Democrat, and everybody else is like 2 or 3 points at least ahead, right?
Missouri, yes. Missouri, the other candidates are significantly ahead. Now, I have a favorite in there, Eric Schmidt. But the others, Hartzler, Long, decent folks. I've got nothing against them. I just think Schmidt's more accomplished. Mm-hmm. But all of them will essentially crush the Democrat. And it's not even close. Then you get Greitens, who, again, left in disgrace, one step ahead of impeachment by a Republican supermajority. Now, it doesn't matter to me. People got really mad when I said, I don't care if Greitens is innocent or guilty. Don't care, because that's not the mission. Mission here is not Eric Greitens. It has nothing to do with Eric Greitens. And my beef with Eric Greitens is he's made it about Eric Greitens. He's been selfish. he is the only guy who puts that seat at risk. At the very least, he makes it competitive, which means we have to spend money there we can't spend winning somewhere else.
Right.
We're officers. And this goes for NCOs and enlisted troops too. I'm not saying only officers.
Sure, yeah.
But he's part of our little crew. So we got to police ourselves. Mission has got to come first. Rob, if you went into a chow hall where your men were eating, would it ever occur to you to hustle up to the front of the line because you're hungry?
Absolutely not, man.
Oh my
Absolutely
God.
not.
Could you imagine that?
You're right, and you point out a good example, and that's in your article, Kurt, and that's Sean Parnell, the
Yes,
Marine
my friend.
from the Pennsylvania.
He's an Army guy.
And he had that's right, Army guy. Sorry about
That's
that. I got to give you guys credit when it's due. But he had a good shot at the Senate seat, I think. But he's got family issues that need to be taken care of. Look, I get asked every day, are you going to run again? Are you going to run again? Well, quite honestly, I'm homeschooling my youngest son. We're in high school right now. Yes, I'm in high school again. So I've got to take care of my family first. And there's a reason why we're doing that. And we just got to support other people that can get the job done, we hope. And we got to find them. So it's not a big character issue to bow out when it's necessary to do.
It's a character issue not to, because he's putting himself ahead of everything else. Look at Sean. Sean is a personal friend. I don't believe a damn word about the allegations of his ex. Now, I'm here in my palatial lawyer office. People lie in judicial proceedings all the time. In fact, that was my mom, the judge. Her advice: everybody lies. So the fact that Greitens' wife said this stuff does not mean to me necessarily that it is true or not. But it means his ex-wife is out there making these allegations. And I don't think this particular allegation or any of the myriad others, because it's not the only one, are what the subject of Missouri's next 6 or 8 months of Senate rate campaign needs to be about. He puts us at risk. He should do it's not right. It's not fair. And life is neither right nor fair. Your mission is to win for conservatives. Yeah. And that means if you're not the best, you should bow out. And I would have told Sean Parnell if he needed to be told that. He didn't. He stepped out to take care of his family, understanding that this is not his year through facts that are outside of his control and frankly unfair. Now people will say, well, Greitens, he's innocent of this or he's innocent of that. Again, this campaign can't be about litigating whether Eric Greitens is innocent or not. He's got too many things. It's too much baggage. It is not worth the risk. And there is a risk. And our country is too important, but he's too selfish to do what he do. If I had an officer who did in my command who behaved in his manner, that is, put his personal interests and desires ahead of the mission, he'd be handing out volleyballs at the rec center. All right. And I don't think you take it either. No,
I wouldn't take it.
And again, I'm not saying Greitens is guilty of anything. I don't know. I have my suspicions, but they're irrelevant. Even if I thought he was innocent of everything, I would feel the same way because he's not the best. And we're not.
And it's you brought up the officer thing, and we both commanded. Yes. And you mentioned that a lot of his SEAL buddies despise the guy.
Well, again,
but I've got 6.5 on one side and 7 on the other that love me and hate me.
I'm sure that there's guys out there who didn't.
As do you, right? So that's not the issue either.
No, but it's more baggage. It's a fight that he didn't have to be in, and some of the stuff's the result of his own undiscipline. Some of the stuff may be absolutely unfair and untrue. I don't know whether his SEAL buddies, and there are a lot of them who don't like him, have anything on him, and I don't care to litigate it. Okay, I know that when you ran, you didn't have a bunch of Air Force guys going, "He's the worst colonel we ever saw."
Nope,
it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
So, again, fair or not fair is not the issue. And I hear all this. Well, he'll stand up to Mitch McConnell. Okay, let's talk about Mitch McConnell because I hear that all the time. Kurt, you love Mitch McConnell.
Now, in all transparency, my friend, that I said I wouldn't vote for him either. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons I got fought so hard against.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing: if Eric Greitens goes there as one of probably 53, 54 senators, because I think we're going to do very well.
Yeah.
I don't like Mitch McConnell. Okay. And I mean, look, you were realistic. I'm not going to vote for the guy. I'm not going to get him tossed out. He's not going anywhere. And frankly, I think if you had a chance to toss him out, it would be incumbent on you to name the individual who can put together a coalition that includes both Josh Hawley and Susan Collins again and again and again.
Because you rightly point out over and over again, Kurt, and I agree with you on this, that McConnell is one of those, I call it a necessary evil.
Yes.
Because he can do things that Schumer can't do on the Democrat side. It's obvious. You've seen it. Even in the minority, he can do things that turn out to be wins for all Republicans, even though I can't stand the guy 80% of the time, but who else can do that?
There were officers that I commanded that I did not personally like, that I would not hang around with personally. Mm-hmm. They were the best guy for the job or gal. And I used them and I treated them professionally. And some I grew to become friends with. So maybe my initial impression was gone. It isn't about your feelings. It's about winning. If I can win with McConnell, I'm going to take the win. If I can win without McConnell, I'm going to take the win. I'm here to win. I'm not here to work out people's personal issues. Now, I'm not saying anytime that anybody has an uphill battle, they should drop out.
Right.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with being in a primary. There is something wrong with being a candidate who has such significant baggage. He's going to be an impediment in the general.
Yeah.
Now, people asked you to get out. You were probably more conservative. Everybody's more conservative, Bill Cassidy. But I think the voters had a right to vote for that. It wasn't like you were dishonest. It wasn't that you tied up a hairdresser in your basement. Now, in California, where I live, that would actually be a significant plus on your resume. That would actually, that would help you. But no, I mean, you just had a different set of views, and they needed to be hashed out. That's why you have a primary. But, is Eric Greitens so significantly different than any of the other guys? Are they such failures that we can't have them, that they're dangerous? Of course not.
Tell us about Schmidt. You mentioned Schmidt.
Yeah,
tell us about Schmidt.
Schmidt's the Attorney General. I've had a chance to sit down and talk to him a couple times. Sometimes I practice law here in my palatial corner office. And I really like what he's done using a litigation strategy. The weapon system he has as the Attorney General to litigate border issues, to litigate COVID issues, to litigate social media issues. And he's really shown me that he's a creative thinker who understands what's important to us. And I like his personal character too. I'm not going to go into some of the stuff, but we have some similar challenges in our families. And I think that the way he's handled them showed some character. That said, I hate the other guys. I don't hate the other guys. Yeah. I just prefer Eric Schmidt. And Greitens. I don't dislike Greitens personally, except to the extent that he's running when he shouldn't be. And I have good friends, very good friends, who are like, Kurt, you're really wrong about this guy. All right, well, we're Republicans, not Democrats. We're allowed to disagree about things.
That's right.
What I think, and you think what you think, and I fully understand somebody standing up for their friend. Although, there are times when you take your friend aside and go, you're barking up the wrong tree, pal, and I'm here as a friend telling you don't need to. And I think that's a talk some people need to have with Eric. You just support the establishment candidate. No, I think my bona fides are pretty bona fide about not being an establishment guy. I'm a winning guy. My job is to win, whether I'm an Army colonel, whether I am a lawyer. I never had a commander tell me, Kurt, I want you to go in there and give it your best shot. And I never had a client saying, go into trial and just do your very best. Okay, my job's to win. And I tell my young lawyers, I say, what's our job? So, well, it's to win trials. Well, that's a means to our end. Our job is to meet the needs of the client. And the client here is the base. And sometimes that means dropping out.
Yeah, it makes sense when you think about it. What do you think? Do you think we're going to be able to take the majorities in the House and the Senate this time?
I think the House is as close to a mortal lock as you can have, both on structural factors, some great candidate selection. I think we're seeing amazing changes brought about by the radicalization of the Democrat Party, particularly in our Latinx voters. You remember 15, 20 years ago, the new emerging Democrat majority was going to be Latin voters.
I heard that.
Into a Latin family. Let me tell you, when you start talking to them about how the teacher can tell Miguel he's now Isabella, not going to play with these amazing, hardworking, patriotic, pro-family folks. It's just, it ain't going to happen. And we are seeing, 50% Hispanic Republican tendency in the congressional elections, and that destroys the basis of the Democrat Party. They got so comfortable, Rob, thinking that they were going to get these voters, which many of them new immigrants.
Yeah, that's the whole idea behind the crazy immigration policy.
Well, they thought it was a mortal lock, and that there was no way they'd ever go Republican. And frankly, a lot of us Republicans didn't expect it. Some did, and said, "Hey, no, down the road you're going to see." Well, down the road we have seen they did not sign up for the faculty lounge agenda of the Democrat Party, and the Democrat Party took them for granted and decided that they were going to essentially treat the working class as a bunch of racist idiots who needed to be led and lectured to. And that's, for a party that is really based on the working man, with some of these kind of rich gentry folks, I just don't think they're building the coalition that they need to win. And I think all these factors come together for November. It's going to be very ugly, and I think we're going to do very well in the Senate. I've seen people talking over and under is 53.5 seats. I think that's accurate. I think we could see a 54-seat Senate. I think a stretch could get us a 55-seat Senate. And if that happens in 24, which is a very good year for Republicans, we could go over 60.
That's true. We could go over 60 in 24 if we get to 55 this year. But the question is, and this goes back to McConnell and his ilk, not that I dislike him personally. This is all about winning.
Yes.
We got to win the elections in order to be able to reset and set policy that's good for the United States of America, good for the states, and good for the people.
Absolutely.
But you see and have seen that with the slimmest of majorities, the Democrats come in and they go all out for their agenda, their policy agenda. We don't do that.
Well, they've tried, and I think in many ways they've failed. They're going to get their Supreme Court nominee squeezed through. They are going to get.
Sadly.
They got one, COVID relief package, but they didn't get their Build Back Better.
Right.
They haven't got some of the crazy stuff they really wanted. And that's because, and look, we got to rigorously assess. He annoys me greatly, a lot, because he's not as hardcore as I am. But he has held together the coalition of 50 Republicans, which is essential to picking off one or two Democrats.
Yeah, especially when you got a Collins, a Romney. And
exactly. He's keeping these guys in line. It's like herding cats. And look, I'm not a fan of Mitt Romney. I think Susan Collins is perfectly set for her state, and she's the best we're going to get in that state. I don't resent Susan Collins being Susan Collins, because Susan Collins is literally the only Republican who's ever going to win in Maine. So I understand that and accept it. I want the strength to change what I can and the strength to accept what I can't. And I think Republicans need to do that too. We need to be hard-nosed.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? Say we win the Senate. Say we get 53 votes. What are we going to do? Well, Republicans should have passed this law or that law. Okay, back to Schoolhouse Rock. We don't have the presidency. We're allowed to block things. We're allowed to negotiate for things. That's all, and we're allowed to not pay for things. That's all and oversight. Those are things that we can do, and we need to understand that. I think there's always the Eeyore clique in the Republican Party. We're all doomed. We can't win because the elections are always going to be rigged. All right. In some blue state metropolitan areas, I know because I was a lawyer for the Republicans. Yes, there are going to be problems, especially if we don't prepare the battlefield.
Right.
But that's not true over 535 seats, in the House and Senate. So we can win. I think we will win, and I think what we've got to do is this fight positions us for 2024. And the question is, who's going to be the Republican in 2024? I'll give you a preview of my upcoming book, We'll Be Back, The Fall and Rise of America, which talks about all sorts of cool stuff. You'll like the China page, or China, the Civil War chapters, red on blue, blue on red. Very interesting about how that could work out, national divorce. I don't think
not that we advocate for that.
No, I'm firmly against it. I think we're going to.
I have too.
Look, we got the greatest Constitution man has ever been blessed with, and that's going to be our saving grace. I'm an absolute optimist. I don't think any leader should be anything but. I'm not looking for how I'm going to excuse failure. I'm looking for how I'm going to achieve success. And I think we achieve success in 2024 with a vigorous primary that sharpens our candidate. I think the worst thing we could do to Donald Trump is a coronation, because he will come soft and weak. Human nature. It's not because I dislike Trump. It's because a human being has to be tested and made ready. And I saw him at CPAC. He looks fantastic. He spoke well. I think he focused too much on the past, the 2020 election.
I do too.
I was there. I know the problems, and part of the problems are on him as the commander-in-chief. The Republican, he's the guy who did not have the Republicans adequately prepare the legal battlefield. We need to learn from our mistake and not dwell on it. But I would love to see Ron DeSantis run against Donald Trump. May the best man win, and anybody else who feels that they have something to contribute. And let's hash it out. Let's practice. Let's be ready for Kamala or Pete or whoever, because I know Joe ain't running.
Hey, Biden has surprised me already, so he may just try it.
He might. The guys around him probably don't want they don't want to have to go get real jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're kind of torn, but working hard for them is picking his crap up all the time and cleaning up on aisle 20,000 every hour.
And boy, the message he's sending to our enemies overseas.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that's helping us, Rob, is I think the Chinese and Russians are so suspicious that they can't believe it's as bad as it is. That they got to think we're being played somehow. There's that old Saturday Night Live where you had amiable Ronald Reagan. Well, nice kitties, great, and then they shut the door and he's like, "All right, get in here. I want boom, boom, boom." He's speaking in Mandarin.
Sure.
Maybe you're thinking that's true.
I don't know. I don't think he's going to run again. I'm not sure that he'll even live to see the end of the term, to be honest with you. And that should scare the hell out of you, because then we got camel toe.
He doesn't look healthy to me. I mean, we're not wishing ill on anybody. Yeah, if you're president, your health matters, and we've got to talk about it. It's not, and if you're too delicate for that, you're not doing the rigorous job of holding leaders accountable.
Yeah, I mean, he's the image of the word doddering. He's the image of the word doddering. He's a doddering old really guy.
Is. And this is, look, the guy was never, on track to take over the particle physics chair at MIT.
Right.
But the fact is, he is demonstrating, and I'm not going to figure out a particular diagnosis, but he's evidencing the decline associated with aging.
Yes.
And it is manifest and undeniable. And, I got to tell you, I'm here in, this is Manhattan Beach. Over there is TRW. Over there is LA Air Force Base, where they have a lot of missile command and stuff. It's now
Right.
a spaceport base.
Yeah.
I am literally at ground zero for a nuclear attack. I mean, it goes off literally, like that intersection back there is ground zero to take out a significant amount of our aerospace infrastructure. So I got to tell you, it's pretty important to me personally that I don't see something brighter than a million suns erupt right outside my window.
Well, keep your fingers crossed because he didn't have us in the best position under the.
Well, no, he doesn't. And our triad is a mess.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to rebuild our nuclear deterrent, which I think is unbelievably short-sighted.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot to worry about.
Yeah, he's even afraid of having our forces as ready as Putin has his, just to keep them even. So I mean, it's pretty bad. So let's talk Trump in 2024 again, but not about the election. Let's say him or DeSantis wins. I think they're the only two people that I know in the field that can do what I believe needs to be done. And I think you agree with me, but I haven't seen you say anything about this lately, and that is, man, we've got to go scorched earth on the government when the next guy comes in. If he doesn't go scorched earth, and he can't be appointing like Pence and his crowd or McConnell and his crowd and play into the party, he's got to bring people that are not of Washington, that have some experience with Washington across the board, government, business, all of it, but are not of Washington in that establishment, and put them in mid-level senior positions across the board, and then start tearing it down.
Absolutely.
We got to do it.
Absolutely agree. You look at what Biden did. He came in. He appointed people who agree with him, and who are not afraid to exercise power.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to do. Have people who are not afraid to exercise their power. One of the nice things is we have a cadre of people who have experience in Washington. Trump had no Rolodex.
Right.
Trump came in, if Jeb Bush had won, he would have had 4,000 guys, the Plum Book, which has all the positions. He would have had a fill for each one of them.
A name.
There'd have been a name, there'd have been a spreadsheet, the primary, alternate, tertiary.
Yeah.
And boom, 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 boom. And they would have been appointed right away and gone in ready to do what he wanted. Of course, what he wanted would not be the same thing necessarily that we want. Well, we have a chance to do something like that this time. But I think the next president needs to understand that his power is it largely relates to time. That is he going to devote time to something? As a commander, you understood that the most important stuff gets the most important time. To the extent the 10% of knuckleheads don't take up all your time. Let's look at the military. If I were advising Ron DeSantis, who's a military guy, and I think I hopefully Trump has learned from his experience being betrayed by guys with stars. He's impressed by it. You and I are like, they put their pants on the same way you do, except sometimes it's backwards.
Yeah.
If I were on DeSantis, I would say, okay, every morning from 9 a.m., 0900 to 0930, I'm going to work on the military. And that means I'm going to address specific issues. And I'm going to call the Joint Chiefs, and I'm going to fire most of them. And then I'm going to tell their deputies, this is my intent. I'm going to begin giving orders. And I'm going to say, okay, we're going to meet here again. It's Wednesday today. We're going to meet here Friday at 0900. At 0900, you will come in and you will affirm to me that you have emptied out every slot that contains the word diversity, inclusion, or equity within the United States military, both civilian and military. You will personally inform me that you have completed that mission, which I am giving you now. My intent is that when you come in and brief me, none of those slots will be filled because we are not doing it in it. And then, next week you're going to come in, you're going to affirm to me that you have personally, that you have ended every, Norwegian Viking Appreciation Day. and all that
Wait
stuff.
a minute, we don't have one of those.
We don't do that. Combat readiness is the thing. And then I would say, the weekend after that, I'm going to go to a military base. I'll let you know the day before. When I get there, I expect to see the chain of command. And, I'm going, if I go on a ship, for instance, I will walk up to the captain. I'll go, Captain, thank you for welcoming me to your ship. I want to see the train. I've got, Captain Smith here from my staff. You're going to walk down and show him the training records indicating that firefighting training has been completed for this ship. And he's going to come and tell me about that. And when he tells me that that's done to his satisfaction, I'm going to shake hands with you and tell the Admiral how great you are. And if that doesn't happen, Admiral, you're going to come and report to me with your entire chain of command up to the Secretary of Defense why this ship is not ready to fight fires. So you can, he, as a commander, he'd know what to look for. I'll tell you how fast. When you have a president who says, I'm flying to Minot Air Force Base and I'm going to look at your nuke procedure testing stuff, and you're going to explain how fast would that mess get cleaned up?
Let me see your ops testing.
Holy cow! And you need a guy who knows what to do. Goes out to National Training Center. Great. I want to see the maintenance records on your M1 Abrams. For this Op 4 battalion. I mean, their heads would explode, but stuff would be squared away. And you say, my goal is warfighting. I will come to you and check warfighting, or I will call you and check warfighting. I would also have a small group of individuals scouring the internet for me to find illustrative problems. Say some chaplain at Elmendorf Air Force Base was told, told he wasn't allowed to preach about what Jesus says in his view because it offends certain people. Great. Tuesday at 9 a.m., the entire chain of command from his headquarters headquarters squadron commander up to the SecDef is in my office to explain how you are going to fulfill my intent, how you have fixed this problem, and you're going to fulfill my intent that all soldiers are freely able to exercise their religion. And bring your deputies. The other thing I would do is I would tell the generals right out, I'm looking for heads to put on pipes. Don't be that guy, because I want to show generals that I will not only relieve you for incompetence, there's no resigning. I'll relieve you, then I'll direct you not retire and review your performance at your present and previous ranks to see if you adequately perform. Now, if you're a 4-star and I've relieved you, you haven't adequately performed as a 4-star. So your best day is retiring as a 3-star. But we're going to check into that too. Do not cross me. That's how I play. What are your questions? Oh, no questions? Excellent. How fast could you turn that around? And you just need a commander-in-chief willing to devote the time to do that. Half hour a day.
Yeah. And in every department, I mean, as you were talking, I'm thinking about the Department of Energy and how starting out with how many nuclear reactor approvals are we going to do this week? I want to see them all everyone in waiting approved by next Friday.
Mr. Secretary of Energy, I want you to bring the guy in charge of the civil servant, the SES guy, in charge of nuclear approvals. I want him to brief me on the status of each pending approval and his plan for getting them done. But he may have to wait because they're playing security clearance games with my staff. So the head of the JPAS is going to come in here and personally brief, along with the head of the FBI, on his plan to get all my people's security clearances approved within 5 days.
Exactly. I mean, that's the only way it can be done. And then he's got to appoint people that will do those things without being told they need to do those things. The same exact approach.
Eventually, word comes down that when the boss wants something, he wants it. Don't be the guy in the way of what the boss wants. Yeah. Now, of course, the boss has to be smart enough to listen to people saying, intelligently, hey, maybe that's not your best plan. Maybe this is a better way to achieve your objective. Great, let's do it that way. You need a guy without pride of ownership. A guy who doesn't want to take credit for anything is almost unbeatable.
Exactly. exactly. And this can be done.
Oh yeah,
This could be done. This country could be turned. This country's government
leadership
could be turned
101.
around in a month.
The same principles that when I took my '05 command apply in general form to the presidency and any other leadership position. Come
That's
in,
right.
establish what you want, and make it clear that you intend to get what you want, and your guys will perform. Some won't. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's why we have deputies.
Well, Mr. Future President, I think this guy Slichter, he ought to be Secretary of Defense because he's your man.
But I wouldn't mind being the guy who goes to the Pentagon, sits down with generals, and says, "All right, General, what would you say you do here?"
I would love to be your assistant.
Oh, you and I could have a very interesting time. We would have lots of enemies among the guys at the height. But as you know, when you have a bad unit, when you have a unit with problems, the bad people are happy because they're not being held to account.
Right.
The good people are furious because they're not able to do their job.
That's right.
That's the key. You come in and you empower your good people, boom, you're going to have a good unit. It's tremendously difficult. It's also amazingly simple.
You're absolutely right, man. But we already got enemies. I've been calling out the Undersecretary of the Air Force already with this whole transgender, most senior ranking man wearing a ponytail in the Space Force or something crazy like that. It's that's got to go. And it's not that I care, because I don't care about that guy or gal. I don't care what he wants to be called. He's not going to make me call him whatever. I'm going to call him what he is. But we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to get people that can do the mission.
Roger, I wrote about that in town hall recently. The age of tolerance is ending. And it's ending because of abuse.
Yeah.
Tolerance. Look, a guy wants to be a woman. Most of us are like, I don't get it. I understand that if you want to live as a woman and you're a man, because you are a man, there's some wrong, and you're probably in a lot of pain, and I don't want to add to somebody's pain.
Right.
I have no desire to hurt you. I do have, and that's how it was sold, and that's a good way to sell, but that isn't the product they provided. The product they provided was, now you have to affirm me, and your daughter needs to move over so Jimmy can swim as Juliet. And we didn't sign in for that. It's unfair. It's obnoxious. And it makes, I think there's going to be a backlash. Hopefully we can control the backlash so that we're not doing injustices.
Yeah.
I don't want to hurt people. I want a military that functions. And, people with gender dysphoria have a problem, and that problem can affect military readiness. And we have to be able to say that. Absolutely. And we have to be able to say that other things may affect military readiness. I have grave doubts about women in the infantry, not because I don't think women have character. I had a staff sergeant in the Gulf, Rob, who hid a photosensitive skin disease in the Gulf so she could be with her squad. I had to send her home.
Yeah.
Don't tell me she didn't have heart.
Sure.
Yeah. Trying to do her thing. Even at risk to herself. I had to be the guy who stood up and said, no, you can't, because factors outside your control. Look, factors outside your control include being 110 pounds and needing to carry 120 pounds of equipment. Yeah. That doesn't mean you're a bad person, you lack heart, that you should be disrespected. It means maybe this isn't the right job for you.
Well, yeah, my 05 command was a B-1 combat squadron, and the wonderful women that were serving as combat aviators in that unit, they had the same issues, challenges, and successes as the men did. Didn't matter. But quite frankly, when the fangs were coming out, it was time to bring the fangs out and go kill the enemy. My two top combat co-pilots were women, but they could do that job. They could do that job physically, mentally. There wasn't anything that we could identify that would preclude them from being a teammate that can take care of a man.
See, and
You know?
that's the story.
That's the difference, right?
That's the story we want to hear from a guy. Look, nobody's going to confuse you, Rob, with some soft-hearted liberal who wants to earn brownie points with feminists. You just simply testified to what you observed.
Yeah.
One of my things was I was very concerned when we had gays in the military changing over that was going to lead to huge problems. Mm-hmm. In many cases, it did not. Now, there are people who unfairly applied rules and were obnoxious. That a different problem. Yeah. But I can't argue with what I observed. I observed many of the same soldiers who I always kind of thought were probably gay were now, okay, well, I'm gay, and now I'm going to process your promotion paperwork. And yeah. I'm never going to tell you, I have to report what I see. That portion of that change did fine. It didn't change readiness in any unit
right.
I was in.
I agree. I was in 06 when we repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And, I was in the process of approving 05 level commanders in the unit. And one of them turned out to be gay, a lesbian. And but I didn't know it, and I shouldn't have known it, number one. But that policy of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, that caused some people to get in trouble with their own honor and character by lying and that kind of stuff. And the exact opposite occurred when we repealed it, from my perspective, and that is that all of that just kind of evaporated, and we all moved on, unless somebody wanted to identify it, like President Obama.
Well, exactly. And again, you and I are not here to try and be politically correct. If it was a problem, we'd say it. But we have to report honestly on what we've seen. Because most people have not been 06s in our military and didn't have that perspective. I remember staying with another 06 at a change of command, and it was a support unit, and there was a female, and her life partner was there. I didn't know. And I kind of looked at my buddy. I said, well, we're in a different army, but were we, in the sense that this is a person who did just fine in that unit. This is a person who achieved what needed to be achieved. Look, those are the facts. I can't change the facts because it doesn't meet a particular agenda, including one that conservatives are supposed to be for.
Sure, absolutely.
But then again, there is a lot of nonsense that I think is really hurting the military. The CRT stuff is terrible. The idea that you're dividing people up by teams it's so anathema to what we are about and to what we saw. I've never been in an organization as open-minded about who people are as the military.
Yeah, unfortunately, the CRT and the transgenderism and the DIE, I call it DIE because that's what it is, die.
Yeah, it's going to make soldiers die.
My number 3, I've had 3 sons in the military. The third one that was on active duty left active duty on purpose because he was forced as a supervisor to do training sessions last year under Secretary Austin's extremism training that identified and culled out white males as having privilege and everybody else is not, and he saw it immediately. He didn't even have to call me and ask me. He said, "That's not how you build a team and maintain a team.
That's not how you build a team." And it's not always. It's worse than stupid.
Yeah,
it's evil.
It's a recipe
for failure.
That
is un-American and un-Christian to divide people up by immutable characteristics.
Yeah,
now,
I think
not everybody's Christian, but
I think the fairness issue and the justness, not justice as in social justice, but justness of the issue of dividing people up by race, by gender, and not just dividing them up, but teaching children that one is worse or better than the other, and they should hate one or the other because of that. That's what I thought we fought against in the civil rights movement.
That's exactly what it's just evil.
Yeah, and I think that's why the Democrats have really bit it off.
Well, I think they've really screwed up with that. I think decent people inherently understand that. I think a lot of people see that as a way to get personal or collective power. And I think there's a huge pushback to it. I think people are tired of it. People don't, people, especially like immigrants, they didn't come here to live with the same kind of balkanization nonsense that they escaped from. They didn't come here for that. They don't want that stuff.
No.
And I think a lot of the the working class folks who maybe would have been Democrats in a previous age are going, we didn't sign up for this.
Yeah, and I know the Latin families that have come here didn't sign up for that. When I started running for office in 2014, I realized right away that the Hispanics that were opposed to the Democrats' immigration policies were the ones that were most aggressively for somebody like you or me that was an outsider but experienced enough to know what's right and wrong.
Yeah, I think
it was unbelievable. I was amazed.
Well, look, we're told these Democrat stereotypes of people, and our Latinx friends are a very diverse crew. I happen to marry first of all, there is no such thing as Latinx. There's not even Hispanic.
I haven't used that word.
I just love that word. It drives my wife, who's an immigrant from Cuba, crazy. She just hates it. And but the thing is, there's very different folks who are very new and may come from Mexico are very different than a family that's from Panama and may have been here 3 generations. And they all get lumped into this one, amorphous mind, and it's so condescending that you don't see people as individuals. You just see them, even even last name doesn't work. My kids don't have a Hispanic last name, but they're Hispanic. The little things, Rob, it's just so stupid to divide people up like that. It's just dumb, and it is, and I do think it's evil. I think it's just it shows a lack of character to do that because you're either morally illiterate or you're trying to scam people.
And that's why I hope we can get the military turned around because that organization, that's what brought me, a 17-year-old, to know what I had been raised as an Air Force kid, was that everybody is the same, and that you judge people based on their character. You don't judge them based on anything else that's immutable.
Yeah,
and it's just nuts and evil. I like that.
Yeah, I wasn't raised like that, and and none of the organizations I wouldn't be part of an organization that supported that sort of thing. And again, I hate saying things like that because you get the idea that we're trying to virtue signal in some way. We're really on the liberal side. Well, first of all, liberals aren't on that side. But I'm not. I'm just trying to tell it how it is.
Yeah, there's a difference between just laying out the facts as one sees them and then trying to push some ideological agenda. And people like you and me tend to do more of the facts laying out and say, hey, it is what it is. Before I have to let you go, man, you're the only soldier that I know personally that has been to Ukraine, that trained the Ukrainians. Based on what we're seeing in the last 3 or 4 days, what do you think is going on over there? Is Russia really getting bogged down? I'm not so sure that's true because I know they use the old Soviet tactics and they're just smashing cities at this point.
Well, look, I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows. I'll bet you the ISR folks are getting about 80% open source information with some imagery and maybe. But if we were at the the main command post in Ukraine, do you think we'd have a significantly better picture of the battle lines? You look at a map and you see what Putin's plan was. Before he even invaded, it was very clear. Move very quickly with super heavy forces, smash the conventional formations, sweep the skies, and surround the big cities, grab some ground in the south and the east. And force essentially a change to the new status quo and a neutral or pro-Russian Ukraine. Easy to see. I think he was off his timetable very quickly. I think his forces were not as good as he thought he was. Probably not as good as he was told. Yeah. I think a lot of that probably had to do with corruption. You look at some of his equipment. His equipment looks terrible. You see a lot of flat tires. That tells me bad maintenance. Of course, they don't have the same kind of NCO Core we did. but which really drives maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they are bogged down. I think they've shifted into sledgehammer mode. Let's just fire off artillery. They're going to have problems though because their logistics suck, and they have long logistics lines that are open to attacks from small groups of infantrymen with anti-personnel or anti-tank weapons. I'll see pictures of infantry units. Everybody's either got an anti-tank weapon or is carrying extra rockets. That is a huge change. That you have an infantryman who could put down a tank. It wasn't always like that.
That's right.
Not the M1. In the Persian Gulf War, no American died inside an M1. Guys hanging out the hatches, they got. No one died inside an M1. There was just nothing that could breach it. Now, 30 years later, well, it's a little different. I'm kind of interested in your thoughts, Rob, on the Air Force. I would have thought that the Russians would get air superiority, both because of their air defense system and their larger number of fighters. And it looks like the Ukrainians are still. They may have air superiority. I don't think they have air supremacy. I just thought that was interesting.
Well, you kind of touched on it. You remember back in the old Cold War, we're two old Cold Warriors when we were studying the Soviet Army and Air Forces, rocket forces, the NCO Core, the NCO Core, the NCO Core. It was beaten to us like a drum that their NCO Corps was weak because it was made up of conscripts and it wasn't a professionalized non-commissioned officer corps, and that was the soft underbelly of them. I think that still exists. I don't think that outside of the special operations forces and maybe the strategic rocket forces that the soldiers and airmen that fight the war are really professionalized. So what that means in the Air Forces is maintenance. That's where the maintenance is. The NCOs drive the maintenance, just like they do in the tank corps. And what you've seen with the ground vehicles, I'm not an expert on all those vehicles, but they all have systems. The tired ones have systems to keep the tires inflated and going and all that stuff. Number one, that's why you're seeing a lot of the flat tires, is those systems weren't properly maintained. And Putin was probably being told, everything's good, ready to go. And that's from a weak NCO Corps right there. The aircraft, I just don't think they've got a really good mission capable rate with the aircraft, and they're not able to completely clean the skies. Air superiority is kind of it's a fleeting thing if you can't maintain it. And it doesn't look like they're maintaining it from the open source. You can see the airplanes drilling holes in the sky and stuff like that. You can get glimpses of that on different radars and satellite photos and everything. So they're not maintaining a solid umbrella like in NATO or the U.S. Air Force. We would, if we were to go put a no-fly zone over that country, I mean, nothing's going to come in unless it gets shot down, unless we want it to.
Boy, I remember watching you guys in the Gulf. I mean, there was never when I could look up in northern Saudi Arabia where I didn't see, something where it's 3 B-52s, A-10s, Tornadoes, whatever. It was all over. If it flew from the enemy, it died.
There hasn't been an American killed in wartime by another aircraft in forever. Okay, it's not since the Korean War, I think.
We haven't been no ground attack since Korea.
So that's the difference right there. Is our NCO Corps? I mean, man, when I was flying combat missions, I came down. My chief NCO, my senior maintenance NCO, met me at the jet because I was the commander. But and I'm on my way to debrief. He would brief me on what's going on and how the machines were looking, what kind of parts problems we were having, those kind of things, and what we were going to be able to fly. But I don't think they do that in this. I don't think the NCO Corps is the same professional NCO Corps that we have here in the United States. And I think the Ukrainians now have been trained by NATO forces. And you can see the difference in their forces. And I'm guessing, an educated guess as a professional like you, that their NCO Corps has become more like ours.
I think we've seen a lot of that. I think we've seen a lot of when I was in Ukraine. I mean, we got there in '98, so it was still those of us. All of us had been Cold War on both sides, and of course, once the vodka started flowing, it was like, we had come over the border. You America, you NATO guys couldn't have stopped us. But they changed and grew. They were with a battalion of Ukrainians and Polish were with us in Kosovo, and I think some of that's paying off. I do remember being in Ukraine. We were supposed to teach about peacekeeping, and I said, "Gosh, we had to teach them anti-armor ambush and how to use javelins." And they were like, "Nah, we're not going to do it. We're doing peacekeeping." I'm like, "Okay, you guys are a boss." But I thought, but no, they've obviously. Ukrainians have performed better in actual organized forces than I expected. I expected their main forces to be shattered very quickly. They weren't. I do think it's important, the small unit leadership with these small groups of infantry with anti-tank, that's a lieutenant, that's a staff sergeant, sergeant first class job.
Yep.
And they're coming through. It reminds me of my own CAV units where I would send an NCO and a couple soldiers out with a vehicle with an anti-tank weapon, and they go out and scout, engage when appropriate, without me there telling them what to do. So,
and that's the difference in in the way the Russian army is organized. That's one of the key differences is in how they train their leadership. You don't do much without permission.
No.
What really brought it home to me is you probably saw the same video that I did of the ambush by a couple of guys, maybe 4 of them with javelins on an armored column.
Yep.
The ambush kicks off, and usually if the infantry is riding on the tanks, they're immediately off and they're going to the sound of wherever that's coming from. You didn't see that happen.
No, I was wondering where their infantry was. They just not maneuvering on the enemy the same way I expect Americans to. I don't think they integrate their fires well. I don't think they integrate ground and air the way we do. Doesn't mean they're hopeless or not powerful or that they can't flatten the city, because there's a lot brute force can do. But they really don't seem to have the finesse Americans kind of take for granted. I sure hope we still have it. I was surprised pleasantly at how well the Ukrainians fought. I was surprised also pleasantly at how poorly the Russians could conduct this kind of large-scale operation. Because I'll tell you, if it had been American units invading Iraq, invading Ukraine to try and pull off that mission, we could have done it.
Sure. Yeah.
We could have done it. And
we'd have had better weather forecasting and planning too.
Well, all that. But we'd have moved harder. We'd have moved faster. It doesn't mean we wouldn't have had insurgency type stuff. I expected that to start up later than it did. But I think it was if it was American forces, especially supported by American air power, not to build your ego up any thereof. I don't think it would have been. I think the Russians thought they could do what we could have done, and it's obvious they couldn't.
Yeah, I believe that Putin thought before this operation that he had a force that may be smaller, but was as nearly as capable as what the United States was doing in Iraq and Afghanistan, especially on the move to Baghdad and beyond on Iraq in 2003. But it's obvious that they may have thought they had that capability, and they may have thought they trained for it, but it's in the category of not quite right. You remember that? When you go to a different country and you go, man, this is kind of like home, but it's something about it's just not quite right. It's the not quite right armed force of the state of Russia, and Putin thought he was playing with an American equivalent armed force, and he's learned a valuable lesson.
I mean, they've got some good stuff. They've got pretty good counter battery fire. They've got good electronic warfare. They've got some very good missiles.
They do.
But, it's, as you and I know, the basics come down to the troops. And I don't think they invest the time or the trust in the troops that they need to get the kind of fighting force that masters this kind of high-intensity battlefield.
Yeah, have to totally agree with you. And I think I think you're going to see a negotiated solution that probably includes the Donbass with the land bridge to Crimea going to the Russians.
I think that's a very likely result.
Everything else come home with a neutral, some form of neutrality, Ukraine like Finland.
I think that's likely. And if that's what the Ukrainians feel they need to do, that's what they need to do. If they want to fight to the end, it's their country.
And the U.S.'s lack of leadership, diplomatically or militarily, is not going to matter a damn bit, because the Ukrainians have carried it so far. So.
I think there are a lot of people who just want this over, and they don't really care the effect on Ukraine. But again, it's Ukraine's job to care about that. I care about the effect on America, even though I'm sympathetic to the Ukrainians.
I'm with you, my friend. I'm with you. Well, thanks, Kurt. I appreciate it. Once again, spending an hour of your time with the Rob Maness Show audience is greatly appreciated. And let's stay in touch as we get going into this 2022 election cycle.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
You bet.
Bye.
Bye. Well, my friends, that's retired Army Colonel Kurt Slichter, author of 6 and almost 7 of the greatest books you'll ever read. So get out there and find them. And you can read them on townhall.com. And until next week, I'm Rob Maness.